Hi, everyone. Excited to be here. I will kick things off. I'll pull up my slides. Also, if there are questions, please do ask as we go. I'll try and keep that question tab open so I can answer them. I much prefer interaction than just kind of chatting at you. So if anything comes up, please let us know. Awesome. So today I'm going to be talking about our financial education program here at Chime. This one's a little bit different than some of the other programs that I've built or seen. So I thought it would be a good one to share. And I'll just get into it. So a quick overview for anyone who doesn't know Chime. Chime is a financial services company. We're a banking app. We are built on the idea that banking services should be free and easy and accessible, and really hoping and trying and have in some ways disrupted the financial services industry, which has historically been pretty exploitative. So yeah, our mission is to unlock to unite everyday people to unlock their financial progress. So jumping into financial education. So my why, I think this is always really important when thinking about a program that you're building or what you're looking to do is really like, why are you trying to do this and what's the purpose of it? As I said before, financial education is a little bit different in two ways. I think the first way is really financial education for Chime is built as something that should be pervasive throughout the company. So as a financial services company, it's really a foundational need for us to be able to provide financial education. And so it's not just something that sits in the impact function. It's something that I think about across all teams, across our products, across like all of our Chime ecosystem. How can I be embedding financial education within the Chime ecosystem and then the broader community impact ecosystem of where our customers live and work? And I don't think we're at a perfect place. We're definitely not at a perfect place, but I do think when impact programs are at their peak, they're really not seen as these separate things that are to the side of a company's core mission, but really integrated into the mission. And I like to think of them as sort of a wheel and spoke model, where there's the core programming, whatever the why is, and then there's different ways that this shows up throughout the company. Obviously, this is not always possible, and there are lots of things that as impact people, we will own directly and always be driving, and they won't always connect in perfectly. But being able to align your program North Stars with your business vision and being able to incorporate business goals and metrics into your own program goals can really help create some pieces, even if it's one or two spokes that help drive impact and business impact, which I know we've all talked about as something that's important. So some of these, apologies in advance for some of these. I'm not a deck builder, so I hate decks, but I will go through these slides. And some of these are built on Gemini, like this beautiful one. There's lots of AI tools that do this better, but I use Gemini for some of these. So we have our why. We then needed like the what. What is it? What is FinEd? I think sometimes programs are very focused and easy to kind of, what it is, what the goals are. I ran a program previously in another company that was around reducing recidivism through tech upskilling. That was very kind of linear of what that meant. Financial education is super broad and pervasive. So the next kind of step in my thought process and how we think about building this out is like, what is the thing that you're trying to do? And for us, I define financial education as super broad. So there is a curriculum aspect that is just basic learning. Like you need to have the knowledge, but you can't do anything with that knowledge if you don't have the tools and the resources to apply and to leverage what you know. So when thinking about what we're building, how we're building it, and how I'm measuring those impacts, it was important to me to include not just curriculum, but also tools, things like budgeting sheets or savings goals, enveloping tools. If you don't know what enveloping is, it's like old school is you put money in different envelopes to save for different things. Now you can digitally envelope. It's like having different savings accounts for different savings goals. And resources, things like financial coaches. We do things like mentorships for small businesses. Our chief financial officer does like mentorships with some small businesses on accounting and cash flow and things like this. So thinking about it holistically, and that's going to be what really drives the value of this program is the curriculum mixed with the action. So then had to get into like, okay, we know we want to do financial education. We know it's important. I know that that's what our customers want to see, and that's what our customers' families and their communities want to see. I know why it's important, and I know like how I've defined it. But I think figuring out the goals of the program is probably core to like is one of the most important steps of building out a program. And I think it's both impact goals and business goals. And that can be hard sometimes. I know it's hard for me sometimes because you want the impact and you want to be focused on like, I want to make sure what I'm doing is highly impactful. I want to make sure it's doing the right things. And that should always be the case. You should always build backwards from that. But if you're not also covering business goals, it's going to be really hard to keep that program going. It's going to be really hard to get more resources for that program. And that's where like a wheel and spoke model is helpful of you're helping to reach other goals through your program. So I'll go through the impact goals first of this program because that's an easier side, I think, because we all understand those really well and inherently think about those. So for our financial education work, definitely improving financial confidence. Financial education is a hard one to goal against. And again, this is probably with a lot of the stuff we work with because you're not necessarily somebody goes through a curriculum or they have a budgeting tool and then they immediately see results. A lot of this stuff is applied over time. And so how do you measure something that you in 3 years from now somebody has applied all this and they're able to buy a house and they're building generational wealth? Like how am I tracking that? It's really hard to. So we have chosen to measure financial confidence. So do people feel like they are more in charge of their own financial journey? Because that's really important, and that's one thing that we want this work to do. We want people to feel like they have their power back in what they're doing. Improving applicable financial knowledge on decision making. So it's not just about financial education tends to be historically not super applicable, not super realistic, and not and like dense to understand. So if you go on to like I'm not like a big bank website and you go to their financial education pages, it's a lot of like CPA speak or like wealth advisor speak, and that's not super applicable. So something that's super important for us in differentiating is how can we meet people where they are? How are we talking to them realistically? I always point out one of my like I think one of the like tips that people always say is you want to spend 30% of your income on housing. My first like real job was at a nonprofit. I was making $40,000 a year pre-tax in New York City. My apartment was like 80% of my income, right? Like, and there was no way to get that down. And so telling someone they should be using 30% of their income is just demoralizing, right? That makes me, it's like punitive. It makes me feel bad about myself, like I'm behind. We're trying to make it more applicable and realistic and make people not feel like I don't want to keep going with this because I just feel bad about myself. I don't know if anyone's ever done, like if you look on like, what should I have saved for my 401k by now? And it's like $6 million. And you're like, oh my God, like I am never going to be able to retire. That doesn't make you want to dig in more into your retirement. It just makes you not want to look at that account anymore. So we want to kind of reverse that and make it feel like good and like, hey, there are things that I can do to improve this, but I'm not in such a dire situation as I thought. And then creating those knowledge action flywheels. So if you ever look up financial education and like, is it helpful? A lot of research will be like, nope, it's not helpful. It doesn't do anything. But when you pair it with action items and like actionable steps, it actually is helpful. So things like, I learned about savings. I'm now able to have a savings account that has an automatic roundup. So I'm saving 20 cents or 30 cents, like it rounds up to the nearest dollar and it will throw the extra money in your savings account. So if I charge something that's $5.70, it'll put 30 cents into my savings account and just charge me $6. Like those are small steps, but they're super actionable and actually proven to be helpful. So it's that like flow, the flywheels that we want to create. On the business goals side, some of these are kind of standard across all my programs. Some of them are specific for financial education. So the work that I do, impact work for Chime and for other companies I've been at, helping to tell that storytelling halo. Chime is a good company. We are fulfilling our mission. We care about our customers. That's important to people. It's important to investors. Speaking of going public, it's important to like business news and PR. It's important to a lot of our audience. It's important to policymakers as a stakeholder, which is another super important stakeholder for us as in a highly regulated industry. So that like, hey, what we're doing good, we're doing right by our customers storyline. It's needed as a financial services company. So this one sort of is basic, but I started at Chime 3 years ago. We had like some stuff that maybe I'd call financial education. If you go to any financial services company, they all have financial education, and it's sort of a basic need. As a financial services company, we didn't have it. So it's like, hey, I can stand this up for us. I can make sure that we're covering our bases in this way and that we're up to par, and we're using it as a differentiator too, which is even added bonus. And then we have some customer goals. So creating stickiness with existing customers. We want you to be able to get the answers you need and take the actions you need within the Chime app, right? Because that's better. If you're using the Chime app every day, you're probably going to be a longer term customer than if you don't ever go into the Chime app. You're not thinking about the accounts. It's not helpful. So I'll get into some of the like hows, but being able to find ways within our app to keep customers in the app instead of having to leave. So if I have to leave to find out what goes into my credit score to improve my credit score, that's not a good thing for the business. Versus if I can stay within the app and learn about that. And then driving trust and top of funnel awareness. So for potential customers or customers that are maybe just signed up for a Chime account, they're not really sure about this. Again, being a trusted place to get information is invaluable. I think I get into this later because we do some stuff on social media, but something like 70% of Gen Z get their financial advice from TikTok, right? So like if we can help be trusted carriers of information, that is better for us as a company. It's better for our customers because they're getting information that's actually real. And it keeps people coming back to the Chime ecosystem. And I think I touched on our audiences, but I talk about audiences a lot because we tend to think about business goals from an audience perspective because they're very different. So our top audiences are our consumers, that's customers, our investors, our policymakers, so like elected officials and anyone who's sort of policymaker adjacent, and internally our employees are also super important to us. This is another Gemini created slide, if you can't tell. This is my advice in always, but definitely how this has grown is start small, build big. It's much easier to learn and grow and get buy-in and get data and get all the things when you start to have small wins, and then you kind of snowball those into bigger. And this program is definitely no different. I think finding the like ambassadors within the company that have buy-in, doing some pilots, getting momentum, and then you leverage those folks as validators for what you're doing. So it's not always you going and telling everyone like we need to be doing this. This is important. Here's the things. But I have a product manager who tested some stuff out with me, and he's going to talk to his team about this. I have our PR and our government affairs folks, and they're saying, hey, this was really great messaging. Like we need to do more of this. So getting those validators, third-party validators, we love third-party validators, is definitely important, and will help you kind of build out to an ecosystem that you might not have been able to kind of do by yourself. So yeah, always important in life, but definitely this one worked that way too. So how did I start small? This is where I started. So for financial education, I think I get into in a little bit like how I think about my mental model of how this works, but I started core like what do I own? What can I control and what can I own to get something kicked off? And the answer to that is like community work. I do impact work. I went out and found a core partner. Our partner is name is Zogo. They're like an EverFi competitor. If you know anything about the financial education space, they do learn and earn Duolingo style financial education lessons. Super broad. They have everything from retirement accounts to investing to like what is a savings account, what is a checking account, how do I choose a bank. They're Gen Z-ish focused, which is my focus. We decided early on with this that starting like targeting young people who are just starting their financial journeys is much more impactful like in creating healthy habits than combating unhealthy habits for folks that have very established financial habits. Doesn't mean we don't go broad, but that's sort of our core impact audience is around can we create generations of people that have healthy financial habits from the outset. So Zogo ticked a lot of our boxes. They're a pretty early stage company too, so they're super willing to kind of try and test and build, which was important to us. And we could have a branded Chime experience while also having open have it be open. So what in other words, you don't need to be a Chime member to access our curriculum in partnership with Zogo or to access our rewards. So when you go, you can sign up for Zogo, you can use our Chime access code, and you go in and you can take financial education lessons. You earn rewards for when you do lessons, when you do quizzes, and then you can turn those rewards into actual gift cards. So it was a way for me to be able to provide financial education broadly. We could say Chime is doing this, which checks off some of those like storytelling boxes. And I could go into communities with community partners and be able to actually provide financial education that is third party created, tested. It's not in a like self-serving way, which was important to us. It's in, educational. They have built out this is their core competency and they are providing this in partnership with us. So it was a inexpensive way that I could start to stand up some financial education for our community partners. And then what I did was in order to get this out there, we kind of have a two-pronged approach. So we have core partners, like Jumpstart is one of Chime's partners. We were able to say, hey, if you want to, share this with the schools that you serve, like this is great. But we also started to do some owned community events. And we were doing some of this before, but doing financial education events as one-offs and then not having resources that folks could use to continue their financial education journey was sort of an odd message and not super impactful. So once we had our core financial education partner, we were able to do these financial education events. We do them in schools with community centers that create a hands-on experience to kind of jumpstart interest in some of this. And then they have the resources through Zogo to continue learning and actually diving in, because a 2-hour event is not going to solve their financial education needs, but we have the backstop now of Zogo. So we started going into different cities, different schools. And the goal here was, again, like targeting young people. I'd say like 14 to 24 is our core audience for this. like creating these really fun, engaging simulations. So one of the things that we do is we have a game, the picture on the left, you can see it's like a budgeting game. They get a salary with Chime bucks. They have to go and they have to pick out their transportation. How are they going to get to work? What kind of apartment or house are they going to own? Are they going to invest in a house or are they going to rent? What about insurance? We have different chances for folks to upskill and increase their incomes. And then we have fun, like, if you didn't buy insurance, oh, your car got wrecked and actually you have to pay us now. And you go through some like realistic scenarios. And it's the goal of these is to help get young people just thinking about this and being like, hey, this isn't actually like that scary. And oh, I actually should be thinking about this because I'm graduating high school. I'm going straight into the workforce. I'm going to need to get an apartment. Like, what does that even look like? I didn't know I had to pay my water bill. So it's getting young people kind of thinking. And then we have the continued resources for them to actually dive in. So those two pieces are how we really started out on the financial education journey. And it's still something we do today. So we had some proof of concept and some information about like, hey, people are liking this. We're getting some pickup in different channels. It does seem to be like we're differentiating ourselves a little bit. We have some good impact data. And then I started to approach other teams more deeply. So at Chime, a lot of teams are working on financial education. I sort of put financial education in quotes here. This probably happens in lots of places that you all work too. There's teams that sort of think that they're working on impact projects. This happens a lot on marketing teams, right? But they're sort of like stunty things. So they'll do like a stunty thing or like a marketing campaign and it's financial education, but it's not really financial education. But how can we kind of bring these all together so that we can drive deeper value and deeper impacts, but still have different goals? Because obviously, like our social media team is looking for different things than I am, and that's okay. But if we join forces, we can all kind of build this out together. So that's kind of how I think about our ecosystem of this. And do I get in? I think I do get into influence and change. Yes. So like, let's team up. Here's information, data. Here's my goals. What are your goals? Let's figure out ways that we can partner and where I can add either depth or legitimacy or like anything else you might need through these financial education initiatives. I'm getting to like what I actually mean by that in a second. So we had to align on like what is the what? Like what are we actually working towards in financial education so that even when it shows up differently in different places, we all understand that we want financial education to be approachable, fun or engaging, and actionable. And so as long as we're aligned on those things, how it shows up should manifest in a way that's okay by all of us, right? And so I think that like North Star alignment is really important when you are building out hub and spoke style programs, because you will not be able to own everything. And the goal is not to own everything, right? Like it's my dream that our product team is working on financial education stuff. That's amazing. And I don't need to own that. But it's a little scary if you don't have the sort of mental model, mission, North Star of like, what is it that we're building towards? Because other teams might not have the data and understanding that you have of what the communities actually need. So this is my mental model on how I think about this program. There are things that I own squarely. I own external programming. I own engagement with broad communities that aren't just customers. I own our core financial education content partnerships. I own community events. There's other things that I own, right? But these are things that I own, I control, I have the budget for. That is what I am doing from an impact perspective. There's places that I partner. So our in-app financial education content, I can't own that completely because I'm not a product person. I'm not an engineer. I don't own our user journeys, right? So I partner on those, and I'm bringing in the partner with Zogo. I'll talk about that in a little bit. I might bring in like data. I might bring in maybe they'll ask me to kind of go out into the community and do some testing. So we're partnering on those things. Um, I also partner with our marketing team quite a bit, particularly on talent activations, which we'll also talk about on big cross-functional campaigns. So April is Financial Literacy Month. Chime does a big Financial Progress Month. We are all partnering together on how that comes to life in the different pieces. And I partner a lot with our government and public affairs team, particularly on like events and conferences. And when I have a financial education event, we invite local elected officials, or when they have financial education, when they have conferences that we can include financial education in, like we're partnering on those. And then there's spaces that I don't own or partner, but I can influence. So some of the product tooling I'm not partnering or owning, but I am influencing of like what is the best way to do this for our customers. Some new stuff that's coming up now is around like AI training, and can I make sure that the data they're using is applicable and relevant and it makes sense for our customers. Some of the broader like brand campaigns and like and core messaging of the business, I'm not owning. I'm definitely not owning or partnering, but I can influence and be a voice in those conversations, and that's okay with me. So this is jumping into like what this actually looks like today. So we did some pilots, we did some small work, we got cross-functional and buy-in, we have some bigger level company goals that we're tying to. And now it's really bringing it to life. So our core impact piece is our community commitment. We have made the commitment to bring financial education to 10 million people over the next 3 years. We do in real life community events that I've talked about. We've done that in a whole bunch of places. I've left in on these slides too, so you can see the goals, and on some of these, the measurements of like metrics of how we're measuring those. This one is measured by the number of people that we're impacting. We also have our core Zogo partnership, which I've talked about. And that's a big piece of all of this is kind of underlying is the curriculum from Zogo. We do our government and public affairs work. So we have a whole bunch of Capitol Hill activations. The goal here is really building out our halo and how policymakers and government officials think about us. You can see below, we measure that through familiarity and favorability studies. When we do these activations, are people more favorable? Are they more familiar? The answer is usually yes. So we do things with the Financial Literacy and Wealth Creation Caucus. We have done special speaking events with Representative Beatty and Kim, who run the Financial Literacy and Wealth Creation Caucus. We have a policy newsletter that we often will highlight our financial education work. So that's our Capitol Hill. We have our in-app integration. So I have actually partnered with our product team, and we have an in-app financial progress resource hub. This is actually changing for the good in the future. So this will be even more built out. But we have content from Zogo that's pulled directly into our app in Chime. And our customers can actually do modules and learn in relevant places without leaving the app. So that's been invaluable. That's the core of how we're reaching our 10 million commitment number. And we're doing some stuff in the future that'll hit really nice places. So if you are learning about your credit score, there is credit content. If you are thinking about like your savings account, maybe you haven't set up a savings account, we'll serve you up some savings information about why that's important and how you even go about saving when you're in a very like, you're living paycheck to paycheck. We also do financial education foundations for our products. So we have a bunch of like liquidity products, and we have our savings product, and we have our overdraft product. And we want you to understand both how to use those. So there's a whole team that does product education. But with that, we've been able to integrate financial education. So it's not just about using Chime's MyPay, which is our early wage access. It's sort of like pay on demand. Instead of getting paid every 2 weeks, you can access some of your pay that you've already made. And it's great to learn about what that product is and that's necessary for our business, but also like, how might you use this? Why would you use this? How, like, let's learn about budgeting so that you can understand like cash flow and what that looks like. So this has been a cool space that we've been able to integrate also, is around like our specific products. And when we do product launches or when we have ongoing new products, how and why and where should customers be using these? We're also now have financial education much more clearly on chime.com. So chime.com has the largest financial education content library at Chime. It's something that has existed for a while, but wasn't always like usable, engaging, or like actionable. It was sort of a way to bring, they use chime.com as like an SEO engine, right? So you're using when you Google or when you go on ChatGPT and you're like, hey, what's like credit score? The idea here is that chime.com shows up with information about what a credit score is, so that then you are more apt to go and like learn about Chime. Something that we've been working on is making that content again much more relevant, more like how we want to show up in the world, and what types of content is actually helpful. Because a lot of it in the past was sort of just like cutesy articles, and now we're trying to get much more into, now here's like information in a serious way, but in a digestible way. And this is a great example. I put this one on here because it's a great example of how we influence. So I don't own this page. It's a growth marketing engine, but I've been able to partner and influence how they're thinking about this so that it becomes a much more impactful and actually relevant to folks learning, so that it's not just about growth, but it's about driving actual financial education outcomes too. And then we have some fun ones that we also do that I partner on, which is mostly our social channels. So, how are we kind of embedding financial education across all of our platform? Some of these are like, seem a little ridiculous. We did a thing with T-Pain. He crashed a college course. He talked about like financial education. But why I think these things are important is, one, marketing is a much bigger budget than I do. So it unlocks a budget for me. We then did a whole event in Atlanta on Clark Atlanta's campus with T-Pain. And I didn't have to pay for that, which was amazing. And it sounds a little ridiculous to have T-Pain talk about financial education. But if you're making something that historically is super dry, super like you're not understanding it, and you turn that into something hilarious and kind of fun and engaging, people are more likely to then learn, like want to learn more, to want to be talking about these things, to want to be engaging with the content. And that's the goal of this, right? Is to get people wanting to learn more about different aspects of their financial health and how to actionably improve their financial health. So we've done a bunch of stuff that we partner and influence on with our marketing team that brings this to life in places where people are. Because that's the other piece of this is, it's great to do community events. It's great to have our community partners, but people are on TikTok, people are on Instagram, people are on YouTube. And so we do need to be showing up in these spaces if we want to have an impact on people's financial health and financial education. Oops, I clicked twice. And then we have our ongoing programmatic partnerships. So some of this, I feel like sometimes like we go through all this, there's so many places and you're like, okay, but where's the real impact? We do have deep ongoing community partnerships that are really bringing this to life in spaces that Chime as a company might not always be like touching, or might not be like the trusted provider of financial education, which is totally fine. So we have our Chime Community Changemakers program. We always make sure that through, it's an incubator type program, we make sure we have financial education organizations that are in that are thinking about this in new ways, and are like really deeply understand the communities where we work in a different way than I do. We also have partnerships with organizations like Jumpstart and Junior Achievement that are like these bigger, more established companies, nonprofits and organizations that allow us to scale. Because I think that's always a challenge, right? Like how are we reaching the people we want to reach at scale? And we do our financial education work through trusted partners. And so we have our in-app stuff that's for our customers, but then through our trusted community partners, we're able to reach much broader audiences. Again, in a way that's super trustworthy, because financial services has not always historically been super trusted. So I want to make sure that folks are getting content in a way that is, they trust and they understand. And then my last piece on this is celebrate the wins. This is, again, sort of life advice. It's so hard for us all. And I think impact professionals in like specifically, it's so hard, right? Because we're always like, if somebody asks me, like, how'd that go? My answer is always like, I just wish that like we could have reached more people, or like, I feel like we could be doing more, like we should be doing more. But why I think this is so important, not just for our own morale, but it's more important even when you're working in cross-functional programs and when you have a program that's hitting different places of the company, is because cross-functionally, people need to feel like they are making a difference. Like a lot of people, especially like early adopters who are helping you out and like piloting with you, they're doing it maybe because they think it's good for the business, but a lot of people are doing it because they really just want to make an impact. And so it's important to reinforce that like even small wins are wins, and that by celebrating that success, like people will feel even better. They'll want to do more. Like inherently, I do feel like everyone I work with, I know like they want to be doing right by people. And so you have to make sure that they know that they are. Um, and yes, we should be holding ourselves accountable, and we should be adapting and like, no, through this work, like I have not solved world hunger, but the moments matter. And I also think you start to then create this sort of system within the company that feels like when a new product is launched, we all celebrate that, right? Our Slack blows up. We have our all hands. We're talking about the products. We're showing it off. When we hit like a customer acquisition target or a revenue target, like those things are celebrated. And I think that by celebrating what we do and not being afraid to talk about it, it becomes part of a company's story instead of sort of feeling separate, right? Like it people get excited, then they want to hear about it. What else are we doing? How can we dive in? And it creates an accountability piece of, hey, we celebrated this like 3 months ago. Are we still investing in it? And are we still doing this thing? And I think so it creates like a loop of like, hey, leadership, like this is now embedded. We've talked about, we've put our stakes in the ground. We're making an impact. We need to keep doing this. And so I think that that's a really important piece. And we've done this. You can see this, like we have employees that we fly out to some of our events, or if there's local employees, we bring them, they get to kind of interact and be part of the fun of our in real life events. We make sure that it's part of our all hands. We do quarterly all hands. We do in between, we do what we call chime halls that are like town halls. We make sure that there's wins that are celebrated there. We do things like employees will do raffles and things if they participate in some of our financial education or our larger volunteer stuff. We celebrate it within our team and our like Slack channels. We're always talking about it. So definitely making sure that you're talking about it, you're sharing, you're making people feel good, because that is part of what will keep you getting the buy-in and keep the momentum going. So that is all I've got for y'all today. I know it was it was a lot of content and a lot of kind of different pieces, but hopefully the takeaway is around building programs cross-functionally and figuring out ways to match your goals with other business goals so that your programs are dispersed across the business, where you can do that because it enables you to move faster, move further, and really have those programs not be separate, but really have them be part of the fabric of the company.
All right, thank you, Kira. As a reminder, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A tab. And one of the things that I love about the work that you do, Kira, is that your programming, your initiatives feel so integrated into the business, and you just touched on it. When you joined Chime, what was it, 3 years ago?
Mhm.
Was
3 years.
that intentional? Like, you wanted it to be kind of part of the actual business versus seen as something completely separate?
Yeah, I'd say definitely. So I came to Chime like 3.5 years ago, and I came from a really large company. And one thing that I wanted was much more of a ability to have a tops down, bottoms up approach instead of just bottoms up all the time, right? I wanted it to be some like programs that could span different places. And so that was absolutely intentional. I think the other piece of coming to Chime is that Chime is super mission driven. And I know like everyone loves to say like their company is mission driven. Chime's business model is really built on our customers doing better. So we make money on a majority of our money on interchange, which is every time you swipe a debit card or a credit, we have a secured credit card. There's a merchant fee that gets charged. Visa gets some, we get some. So in theory, like if you are not doing well, you're not spending as much money, you're swiping your card less, we make less money. If you are doing well, you are spending more money, you swipe your card more, we make more money. And so because of this like business model, it really is in Chime's best interest to do stuff that helps people grow financially. And so that was something that was super attractive to me because it then creates like an ecosystem, or like my mission is not any different than the company's mission, and my customers are not any different than the company's customers. And that's different than other places I've worked, right? Like our core customers for the business are my core customers. And it also has sort of changed, this is off of your question, but it's changed my perspective on impact work a little bit of um I'm no longer thinking about like financial education, for instance, is not just for the people that need it most. Like, yes, that is a big piece of it. And I want, like, that's important, and access and equity and all these things. But it's also like people are in different places in their financial journeys. And that's great too. And can I help folks no matter where they are? So if you are just trying to get your basic needs met, that is a super important. That's a focus. We want to make sure we're building from that need. But also, maybe you're a little bit further along and you're thinking about like you want to buy your first, like you're ready to buy a condo. Like, what does that look like? And that is also, that's amazing that I can be there for your whole journey and design programs that help the whole journey. And so that is all kind of reasons why I came to Chime.
And going back to the Zogo partnership, when you first approached Zogo and created that partnership, were there any milestones that you needed to hit or you wanted to hit together with Zogo in order to really prove out the partnership?
It's a good question. Yes. So definitely a user milestones was important to us. One of the reasons, excuse me, we went with Zogo is because they also have really great data dashboards, and they were flexible in like what data we collected. So we were able to include, like they have a daily survey question, and we're able to include surveys. So also looking at like, are we hitting financial confidence milestones? Like, is it actually making a difference for folks was important. And I'm able to see that data live, which is super helpful. And then now we're at a place, definitely like the number of users, our embedded financial education content in our app. Something that's been super interesting for us is a lot of it is kind of buried through a few different steps. So like it's not just in your face, people have to go find it. And we've had a lot of people finding and clicking on and like going through the actual modules. So I guess that's another important piece of like are people going to this, but are they actually completing modules? Or are they just like clicking on something and then being like, screw this? So completion rates are important for us. And we're able to really leverage that data for the business. And whenever I tell folks about like the number of unique users we've had on the in-app content, they're shocked because they're like, like that's a huge percentage of the people that are even going to this page, because it's random pages that people aren't like, you go there for very specific reasons. So that's been actually really cool and helpful.
I know we are at time. So if anybody, whether they're on the webinar now or they watch the recording, if they do have questions about the work that you're doing, where can folks find you?
Yeah, definitely find me on LinkedIn. You can search my name. It's on the bottom there, Kira Traore. Or you can absolutely email me. I don't if I can say my email. Is that the easiest way to do this? My business email is Kira, Kira dot Traore, Traore at chime.com. And I'm always happy to talk about this stuff.
Perfect. Kira, thank you so much for joining us and taking us inside the financial education work at Chime. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.